not getting your book signed, have a seat. We also have refreshments in the back, but let's first start our meeting. Welcome to the meeting of the New Jersey Tea Party Coalition. What we would like to do, since we are such a radical group, is to immediately first stand up and salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks for you all coming out this evening on this beautiful, wonderful global warming day. Yeah, I found a nice little image. If you Google Chicken Little global warming, you'll find a nice little picture of the children's book, Chicken Little, and he's running screaming, "It's global warming, it's global warming." So every time I see a picture on Facebook of like 8 feet of snow in Buffalo, I comment with a little picture of it's global warming, just to make fun of the people who I recall when I was in grade school were saying that we were all going to freeze because the sun was going to disappear. And I remember being like 6th grade in Oradell Public School watching these movies in the auditorium about how we're all going to freeze to death because the sun is going to disappear. And I remember feeling scared as a little kid, you know? So I could just imagine what it's like now, because everybody thinks that they got to stock up on suntan lotion because, you know, Obama and everybody says we're all going to have global warming and toast. You know, little do we know, though, that you're making snowmen in November, and I think it's what, 50% of the geographic United States is actually covered in snow right now. So there you have it, folks. Another great liberal lie bites the dust. Yay!
Oh my goodness!
And
Ray!
welcome, Ray! For those, how many of you folks are new here tonight? First time here? Great, wonderful. That unassuming young lady that just sat down right there is our founder. She, back when the whole Tea Party movement started to gain a little traction, when there was talk of something happening on April 15th, decided that she was going to somehow make some sort of a statement. And she got a permit to have a meeting, a protest, an assembly on the Bergen County Courthouse front steps. And she thought it was going to be herself, her husband, 9 children, how many children? And your 9 grandchildren, singing God Bless America. Little she knows, about 350 people would show up. And one of our other co-founders, Michelle, happy birthday. Well, there's lots of food in the back. So. And if you want, you can also mosey down to the bar and support the American Legion. They do have Coke and they do have other drinks and so forth. So by getting a drink from there, you're supporting the American Legion, who gives us the hall to meet here. All right, we do have some news articles in the back. They are, we screen everything because, you know, this is an open meeting and you never know when a liberal Democrat is going to show up and start putting MoveOn.org garbage or something back there. So we do like to make sure that it's cleared by amongst one of the board members so that we don't get anything really crazy in there and so forth, you know? Okay. Our meetings are always well, actually, they are the 3rd Tuesday of every month at 7 till 9 o'clock. And the parking, of course, across the street at the Stop and Shop. Except for next month. Because that next month, we are not going to have it on the 16th. We are having our meeting on the 11th. It's going to be on a Thursday. Mark your calendars. If you don't want to mark your calendars, check your email. If you don't know how to check your email, find out. If you don't have yourself on our email list, there's a sign up in the back. We don't spam. I think Laura's been putting together all the wonderful little announcements. We have fun things like, you know, remember, if you're conservative, next Tuesday is election day. Please go vote. If you're liberal, vote Wednesday. Ooh, and these are rare.
They are.
Anybody who signs up on our email list tonight gets an official "It's Obama's Fault" bumper sticker.
Yes, it is.
I love this. You know, We were thinking about, in the last presidential election cycle, coming up with a bumper sticker, and I said, we've got to do It's Obama's Fault. Because this bumper sticker is going to be valid for a long time.
Yes.
So I think we have to have a second run of them. We had, I think it was 800, and we're down to like maybe 50 left.
Wow.
So there you have it.
So if you sign up back there, then you come up, see me, and I give you one.
There you go. Okay. So our December meeting will be on the 11th, a Thursday. So please mark your calendars, remember that. Also, what we would like to also do right now is we'd like to have a moment of silence to remember a number of things. First off, we always honor our service men and women who are actively defending our freedoms around the world. And they are diligent in the sense that they are underpaid, that they are away from their families, that they are missing holidays, that they are oftentimes living in really difficult situations. And so we want to remember them in our thoughts and prayers. We also want to remember what has happened today in Israel with the massacre that happened from that wonderful religion of peace with its another act of love. I'm being extremely facetious because it is from the pit of hell, otherwise known as Islam. I don't know if anyone caught that the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. this week was desecrated when a Muslim group was allowed to come in and pray in the name of Allah, and a Christian woman was dragged out the door because she happened to point out that this is a Christian church and this happens to be in the name of Jesus Christ because it's an Episcopal church, it's a Christian church, it's not a mosque.
Amen.
Oh my goodness. I gotta
Yeah.
get my blood pressure medicine. Anyway. All right, so we want to remember the poor folks and the tragedy in Israel. We also want to remember Joe. And,
McKinley is in the hospital.
yeah, Joe McKinley, if you know him from our group, he's been very active over the years. He is in a hospital with a serious infection and difficulty. And then the man who's...
Sereno.
Excuse me?
Jim Sereno.
Jim Sereno, who's normally our cameraman. He's the computer guy. He's spoken a number of times in front of our group. He's in Englewood Hospital with some difficulties, so we do want to remember them. So let's just take a moment and remember these folks, these issues. Thank you. All right. Everybody did have a great election day, didn't you?
Yeah.
We're in New Jersey, so what can you do, you know? We are the only state that, you know, didn't vote for Lincoln. They voted for McClellan. But nevertheless, it was really good. And even in our district here, or the district in the northern part of the county with Scott Garrett, who's re-elected. So all that's really good. We do want to make sure that those folks that were elected remembered that the reason that they were elected is because it is Obama's fault, and we want it stopped, and we want it stopped now. So somebody, well, that would be us. We need to communicate that to Krispy Kreme, our wonderful governor, who went down to Washington, D.C. to tell the congressmen that they need to compromise and work with the Democrats. If his rhino horns get any longer, my goodness. Anyway. All right. We do have cameras here, and the reason that we have cameras here is because we have a TV show. We're the first Tea Party group in the nation to have a TV show. So we are recording tonight. Our Tea Time, it's called Tea Time, cable TV program. See, that sneaks the people in that think they're going to watch Martha Stewart or something, you know, all of a sudden Tea Time. Next thing you know, it's conservative politics. Anyway, we are on Cablevision Channel 76 every Wednesday at 6 p.m. and every Friday at 10 p.m. We're on Time Warner, Channel 81, every Wednesday at 6 p.m. And we're also on FiOS, which you have to check with your local provider, and of course you can get it on your mobile devices and so forth. So if you're on a checkout line doing your holiday shopping, you can turn on at that particular time on your mobile device and turn it up real loud, and you can hear tonight's presentation and so forth while you're at the shopping mall, and they can all like look over your shoulder and say, all right. Anyway, please encourage your friends to tune in. And you can also see all of our presentations on YouTube. We also post them on YouTube, so you can go right there and you can watch it, and you can email it to friends and relatives. You can talk about it on Thanksgiving. You can have your liberal neighbors throw drumsticks at you and so forth. So anyway, we do have a donation jar. Where's the kitty? There's the kitty. Okay, yes, the kitty's on the back table. We might just pass it around. That helps us so that we can actually have the website and things like that. We are extremely low budget operation, and we are here to help educate you about what's going on. We're not a political PAC, we're an education organization to allow you to learn about things like our speakers tonight and his experience and so forth. So anyway, that's all part of what we are doing. Now, in the sense of being active, we would encourage you to be active in the political process. And you can do that very easily by going to Hackensack. You can go to Hackensack on the first and third Wednesday of every month to 1 Bergen County Plaza, 5th floor, Administration Building, and meet with the Bergen County Freeloaders. And I got to tell you folks, if you don't have a connection with Bergen County government, in the sense of the amount of dollars that it can really play with, and I mean play with and waste, is greater than the budgets of 7 states west of the Mississippi. Oh, wow. And that's just our little county. Wow. So we're talking big bucks. And I don't know if you realized it, but the old Joe Ferriero Democrat machine crowd of Bergen County is now back. They've been resurrected. They're in Hackensack. They're putting all their friends back in. Oh yeah. Yeah, so all the tax, fraud, and abuse is going to happen again, so we have to go to Hackensack and we have to hold their feet to the fire. All right. Now, we have a very, very special guest. And our very, very special guest is Brian Aitken, who was sent to jail and barred from seeing his son after he was found with an unloaded gun in the back of his car amongst his possessions as he moved from one house to another. Brian Aitken was arrested in 2009 as he was moving back from Colorado to New Jersey to be near his child after a divorce. He was later convicted of possessing a gun, sentenced to 7 years in prison, and banned from seeing his son. He served 4 months of a 7-year sentence when, now, I know I call him a rhino, but he's still a Republican, and Governor Chris Christie actually did one good thing. He commuted Brian Aitken's sentence. So therefore, we won't tar and feather him yet, but as long as he keeps doing some good stuff once in a great while. But anyway, he was granted clemency. So the New Jersey appellate courts reversed 2 of the 3 convictions, and the remaining conviction gave a New Jersey family court judge the ability to ban Brian from seeing his son. Brian cannot vote. He can't own a gun, or worst of all, he can't even be with his own kid. So, anyway. He has an order back. Again with the global warming. You know the tape when it's cold, it just doesn't hold up.
You can't have that
What the?
Kim will come back to that in a minute, but we're going to take the show, the lecture by Brian. So please don't ask any questions, okay, for the first 28 minutes. Hold the questions to the end, in fact. We need to get it on tape for the cable show. So you'll be able to ask questions later. Brian will avail himself. He's a wonderful man. Let's give him the space to make his points so that we can take the show. Okay, guys?
We'd like to thank our friends in the Second Amendment Society for helping us get in touch with Brian and lovely wife Jenna. They're in the back. Brian is signing books, so please support him and buy his book. And I think we're just going to move out and let Brian come up and tell you his story. And again, we just need 25 minutes or so uninterrupted attention. And then after that, you can ask Brian. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank everyone for having me here tonight.
We can't hear you.
Microphone's on.
Is it on?
The microphone is on for recording. The microphone is not on for projection, so you have to speak loud.
Okay. I'd like to thank everyone for having me here tonight. As was introduced, everyone else got out to go out and vote about, what was that, a week ago? And I got to stay home and pull in a favor from a friend, a business partner who has a 6,000 square foot digital billboard in Times Square. And I convinced him to, for an hour, put up a billboard that said, New Yorkers have the right to self-defense too. There's a little URL for where people can go and get my book. But that's as close as I can get to having my voice heard, which is actually not too terrible. I'd like to start off with, I only have 25 minutes because of the length of the show, but I'll be able to answer a lot of questions, and there will be a lot of questions, I'm sure, after this first 25 minutes. But there are typically a lot of questions like, well, how did you get pulled over? And that's kind of where it all begins. I had been living in Colorado and was raising a young family, had just bought a house outside of Boulder, and was living pretty much the American dream. At 24 years old, I was able to work really hard, save up money, buy my first house. My son was born with a view of the Flatirons at Boulder Community Hospital, and things were pretty much amazing. And one day I found out some things that changed my entire life, and I was never able to really reconcile that knowledge with my wife. And in her own words, she was never able to forgive me for not being able to forgive her. And we wound up getting a divorce, and when we were separated, she moved back to live with my parents in New Jersey with my infant son. And I decided, well, clearly I have to sell the house, quit my job, find a new job in New York and New Jersey, and move back to the East Coast so I can be closer to my son. And so I did just that. And about 3 days before I was arrested, I called the New Jersey State Police and asked them, I'm about to move with my firearms. What do I have to do? What's the legal way to do this? I've been living in Colorado. I got them in Colorado. I don't want to get in any trouble. And the detective from the Belmar Barracks of the New Jersey State Police told me, well, there's a number of things that you can do. You can register your firearms, but you're not legally required to. We'd really like you to, but you don't have to. And when you're moving from one house to another, you just need to make sure that they're locked in the trunk of the car and unloaded separate from the ammunition. And he told me I could go on the New Jersey State Police website and see the laws for myself. And I did, and I printed off a copy, and I had them with me. And in fact, just to fly from Colorado to New Jersey, I had to have all of my firearms cleared by TSA. So I was able to get the ATF and the FBI and the CBI background checks, passed all of them. I was able to fly from Colorado to New Jersey, clearing my firearms with the TSA, who, in my experience, not the biggest fans of freedom, but even they cleared me for travel with firearms. And I got to New Jersey and put the firearms along with pretty much all of my other possessions in my parents' house while I finalized a deal on moving back into an apartment that I was sharing in Hoboken. And my lease in that apartment began on January 1st, so that was a Thursday. I took my first carload of my possessions up to my apartment on Thursday, and Friday, January 2nd of 2009, I drove back down for the second and final carload to get the last of my possessions and move back into Hoboken. On my drive down, I got a text message from my ex-wife, and she was letting me know that for the 4th week in a row, she wasn't going to let me see my son, and that she talked with her lawyer, and her lawyer said that it was okay and not to bother her. And I said, it's not okay. It's been 4 weeks. I moved 3,500 miles to be closer to him. I don't understand what I'm doing here if I can't see him. In the previous week for Christmas, my mom and I had spent hours waiting for my ex-wife to show up, and she never showed up. And we called the hospitals, and we called the police, and we weren't sure if there was a car accident because the weather was questionable. We called her, we texted her. We heard nothing until sometime around midnight. And that's when we finally knew that she just wasn't bringing my son. And eventually I took her to court. Didn't have any money left because I'd spent $30,000 on my custody battle. And so I was representing myself. And the judge decided, and this was right before I was arrested, that she had been violating my parenting rights. And he ordered her to give me compensatory time to make up for all the time that she'd stolen between me and my son. And that was a huge victory for me. And on January 2nd, I got that text message, and I got to my parents' house, and I asked my mom, I know I spent all of my money, most of my money's tied up in this house, and I know that you guys have loaned me all that you can, but she's just going to keep alienating me from my son if we don't get a lawyer who tells her that she can't do this. And my mom just told me, I wish that we could, but we're not in a position where we can hire a lawyer for you. We're just not there financially. And that's when I said to my mom, if I can't see my son, I don't know what the point of being here is. And I got my car, and at this point my car had been packed from floor to ceiling, and I started driving to my new apartment in Hoboken. Now my mom she was I believe a case manager for the Burlington County Family Support Organization. And she was trained that when people make questionable statements about potentially harming themselves or other people, that you should call 911 and have a crisis intervention counselor or social worker or somebody come out and intervene. And so my mom thought, well, what did Brian mean by that? I don't really know what he meant by that. And there have been a lot of problems with another member of my family who had been suicidal, and so she thought, I'd better just play it safe. And she called 911 and immediately realized, I'm not the person who had all the suicidal problems, and hung up the phone. And the police responded to an abandoned 911 call. And the first question they asked of my mom was, does he own firearms? It wasn't, do you think he's going to be okay? Tell us exactly what's going on. It was pretty much, does he own firearms? And when she said yes, they asked, does he have them on him? And she said, I don't know. So about 30 minutes after I leave my parents' house, I get a phone call from my mom, only it's not my mom on the phone. It's an Officer Michael Joy of the Mount Laurel Police Department. And he's telling me that there's been an abandoned 911 call, and that they would like me to come back to check me for bruises, because anytime they get an abandoned domestic call, they're worried that there's been domestic assault. And I remember sitting in the car, I just turned off the radio, Modest Mouse was playing, and I remember thinking to myself, that's just the craziest thing I've ever been told. It's the most disingenuous thing I've ever heard. My mom is all of 95 pounds soaking wet, and the kindest, most gentle, warm-hearted person I've ever known in my entire life. The idea that the police officers really want me to come back so they can check me for bruises just doesn't hold water. And I asked him if I was legally required to come back, and he said no. And I said, okay, well, thanks for calling. I'm fine. Things are going to be okay. I'm fine. I'm not going to come back if I don't have to. And he said, okay. And I could tell he's disappointed. And we got off the phone. A minute later, he called back and said, well, immediately I could tell his tone was different. But he said a general alert had been issued statewide, and that all of the police officers in the state of New Jersey would be on the lookout for me and the make and model of my car with my Colorado license plates. And that if I didn't come back, then they were going to bring me back. And there was either an easy way or a hard way to do this. And that pretty much set the tone for the next year and a half. An easy way or the hard way, we don't really care what the laws are kind of mentality. And so I decided, rather than risk an O.J. Simpson-style manhunt, I would go back to my parents' house. And I was really reluctant, but I didn't want to be the subject of a manhunt, so I turned around. And later I would learn this was a violation of my Fourth Amendment rights to be free of illegal and unwarranted search and seizures. But they brought me back and they held me there for 3 hours and questioned me without any probable cause. They claimed it was for my well-being, but there was never a crisis intervention counselor, there wasn't an ambulance, there wasn't a social worker, there wasn't even a phone call to anybody. The very first question when I got back from Michael Joy was, where are your guns?
Wow.
And we spent the next 3 hours talking about firearms. I tried to educate them about what New Jersey's firearms laws were, because I had just talked to the New Jersey State Police and I knew, but these weren't state police officers. These were local police officers who had no idea what the laws were. And ever since this has happened to me, people have told me that I violated the law and that ignorance of the law is no excuse. And I have to show them the laws and explain to them, no, I didn't violate the laws. The police officers who arrested me were ignorant of the laws. Apparently it's an excuse when you're a police officer, but not when you're a law-abiding citizen. Ultimately, after not even having my Miranda rights read until 3 hours later when they brought me back to the police department, I was arrested and booked on illegal possession of unregistered firearms, a law that doesn't even exist in New Jersey. There's no law that you have to register your firearms. And after I explained that to the police officers, they amended that to illegal possession of firearms, illegal possession of high-capacity magazines, which are standard capacity magazines that come in the box from Smith & Wesson, and illegal possession of hollow point ammunition, which the Trentonian later called cop killer bullets in an article about me. I went through about 18 months of pretrial motions and hearings and eventually trial. And I never had any intention of taking a plea deal, and I was offered many of them, about a dozen of them. And after I was indicted, and I'd won custody of my son, and things looked like they were going my way, I got a notice in the mail, and it was called a emergent order to show cause. And I only had about 3 days to put together a response and show up in court because they wanted to take all of my custody away from my son. Now, I hadn't even gone to trial yet. A single witness hadn't testified. And I went before that judge and I explained to him, yes, I was arrested and I was charged with these crimes. They are nonviolent and victimless offenses, and I'm very confident that I'll be acquitted, and I have every intention of taking this to trial and being acquitted. And he said in so many words that he didn't care, and that I had firearms and they're illegal in New Jersey, and he expressed a lot of concern about me being a gun owner. And I said, well, if you're concerned about me having guns, you shouldn't be, because the Mount Laurel Police Department has all my guns, so I don't even have them. And he said, well, I'm not convinced that if you wanted to have firearms, you wouldn't be able to get them. So he effectively took all of my custody away from my son. He placed limitations on me that are so onerous and burdensome that in the past 5 years, I've been unable to meet those criteria, which are weekday 9 to 5, in a courtroom. I have to reserve a room inside of the courtroom, and there has to be an armed police officer there to supervise me for 1 hour. And in the past 5 years, none of those criteria have been met. If a police officer is available, a courtroom isn't. If a courtroom is available and a police officer is available, it's on a weekend, not a weekday. It's just been impossible, and I think it was structured that way intentionally. I don't think that's an accident. I was definitely the conservative boy in the room, and they didn't like that. And that translated into the other courtroom as well, where in a pretrial motion, my judge, Judge Morley, who is no longer a judge and has been removed by Governor Christie, said to me that guns are illegal in the state of New Jersey. What I did was illegal, that he knew I was guilty and that I was going to go to jail, so that I should take a plea deal. And so they offered me 5 years with a 1-year mandatory minimum. And Judge Morley told me I was a young kid, it's only 1 year in prison, your bounce rate back, it's not that big of a deal. And I remember sitting there thinking, that's the most insane thing I've ever heard. And there's no way you would tell your son to take this deal. There's just no way you would. And I decided to fight it. And I knew that I wasn't able to see my son, and I wasn't able to raise him and show him what it's like to be a man and to be a man of integrity and to have honor and morals and principle, so that I had to teach him from afar. And if that meant fighting this, and this was the only way that I could show him what it means to be a good person of high morals and good character, then that's what I had to do. So I turned down the plea deal, and the lawyer that I had filed a motion to be relieved of counsel. So what he effectively decided was that I was being too difficult by not taking a plea deal. So he no longer wanted to represent me. And I said to the judge, I'm very happy with my representation so far. I don't want to get rid of him. Things are fine. I need a lawyer. I don't have any money to hire another lawyer. I really want this to work out. I have no problems with him. But he won, and he was allowed to keep all the money that I paid him to represent me up until trial. And I was left fighting a custody war without a lawyer, and now fighting the great state of New Jersey without any representation. Out of desperation, I found an organization called the Foundation for Economic Education, and they exposed me to the ideas of free markets and free societies. And when I was there, I met somebody who told me, you have to be on this show called Freedom Watch with Judge Napolitano. You really need to be on his show. And, somebody out there will be able to help you. And I remember being incredibly reluctant because I had just started a company, and I didn't want prospective clients to know that I was subject to an indictment. I didn't want employees or anybody else to know about it. It's not the kind of thing that you want to go public about and brag about. And in the past 5 years, over 100 people have reached out to me to let me know they're going through the same thing that I went through, but they're afraid to go public too. In fact, the only person who has had the guts to actually really go public, in addition to myself, is Shanine Allen. And I think history shows if you have the guts to go public and really fight this, the state will back down because they know they're in the wrong. It takes a lot. It takes a lot, and you have to be willing to put everything on the line. But the state will back down if enough people put pressure on it. Eventually, the judge offered me to sign a plea cutoff form, and he said, "Listen, Fox News is trying to use you. Judge Napolitano is not the judge in your case. I'm the judge in your case, and as far as I'm concerned, you're guilty and you're going to go to jail." At that point in time, I got in touch with Evan Knappen, who's a lawyer in New Jersey, and he'd written at that time, I think 3 or 4 books on New Jersey gun laws. I think he just came out with his 5th, and the NRA stepped in and took care of my legal expenses to make sure that I could have Evan, and that was huge at that point in time. Because I remember not having anything. I had to scrape together the retainer to give to Richard, who was one of Evan's attorneys. And at the next hearing, he came up to me and handed me a check, and I was like, "What's this?" And he told me, "The NRA is taking care of it. Don't worry about it anymore. Just worry about your son." And that was huge. But they handed me and Richard this plea cutoff form, letting me know that this was the last deal we're going to give you, and it's never going to get this good again. After this, if you sign this piece of paper and you don't take the deal, we are pursuing a conviction to the full extent of the law. And I remember I wanted to sign it right then and there and say, I'm not interested in any deals. And the judge actually stepped in and said, whoa, 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 you don't have to make a decision now. We're going to give you 2 weeks to think about it. All you have to do is call your lawyer. You don't even have to come back in. Just tell him that you're willing to take the deal, and all you have to do is come in and report for sentencing and just go to prison. Well, that doesn't sound great. I'm just going to sign the piece of paper now. I have no interest in doing that. And so I signed the plea cutoff form then and there, saying I'm not taking a deal. And after I signed that plea cutoff form, they came back and made at least 5 more offers. And that showed me that they were really interested in not taking this case to trial. And that's when I really knew I had a strong constitutional case. And so I took my case before a jury, And this was must have been, the end of May and the beginning of June of 2010. And we spent the entire few days talking about the laws in New Jersey, especially these exemptions in New Jersey, because gun possession is illegal in the state of New Jersey unless you meet a number of these exemptions. So you have to have a concealed carry permit to carry on your person or concealed in your car. You have to have a permit to purchase if you intend on purchasing a firearm. And of course, there's a laundry list of exemptions on how you can carry them from one place to another, including from the place of purchase to your residence, from your residence to go hunting, from your residence to go to a shooting range, and from one house to another. And so effectively, guns are illegal. And they arrested me, and they said, guns are illegal, illegal possession of firearms. Now you say that you meet one of these exemptions, prove it. So in New Jersey, you're guilty until proven innocent. And we talked about the moving exemptions throughout the entire trial. In fact, even the police officer said that his reason for requesting such a high bail amount is that I had only lived in New Jersey for 3 days and I was moving. But when the judge decided to charge the jury, he told them they were only allowed to consider whether or not I possessed firearms. And that he decided as a matter of law that none of the exemptions, even the moving exemptions, applied. So even though if you look at the police report, my arrest report, and you look at the statute for how you're supposed to transport firearms, it's practically a copy and paste job. I did it exactly how you're supposed to do it. But he told the jury, you're not allowed to consider any of those exemptions. And the jury came back, to their credit, and they had a question, and they said, please define the exceptions to the law for all 3 charges. That is, it was announced that moving is an exception. We need to be clear of all exceptions, if any, for each charge. And the judge said, I don't know if you guys can't hear me, but I said no. I said, you're not allowed to know what these laws are, and I'm the law. They came back 2 more times requesting the exemptions. Each time they reworded their question to try to get the judge to give them these exemptions. And each time the judge refused. Ultimately, in the second day of deliberations, they came back after the 3rd time of requesting the exemptions, and they found me guilty of all 3 charges. And I was sentenced to 7 years in prison with a minimum mandatory of 3 years. And the sentencing judge, who was not the same judge who oversaw my trial, that judge was kicked off the bench by Governor Christie 2 weeks after my trial ended, 2 weeks too late. And the sentencing judge said that the reason for such a harsh sentence was not because he believed that I was a criminal or that I would ever commit a crime ever again, but because he knew that there was a need to create a strong deterrent from gun owners for committing the same offense. And they needed to send a message. So I was their message. And that's when I decided that if that's the message, if I'm the message, then I'm going to make sure this message doesn't work out for them. And ultimately I spent 4 months in prison of a 7-year sentence. Many chapters are dedicated to what life is like in prison and what my experience was like. And ultimately on December 21st, 2010, Governor Christie issued executive clemency and released me from prison 6 years and 8 months early. And it's a shame I couldn't even vote for the guy if I wanted to. Because honestly, after that, he would probably have it. I know there's a lot of, people have a lot of questions about Governor Christie, and I don't have any questions about him. If it was Corzine, could you imagine where I'd be? I don't even think women would do it, but Christie did it. And he vetoed that magazine bill too, when they wanted to reduce the magazines from 15 rounds to 10 round capacity. And everybody put pressure on him, but he stood strong. So the book really goes into a lot of the details about really what I've been through and what's happened, and nothing has really changed. I won in the appellate division, and 2 of the convictions were overturned, but they upheld 1 to make sure that they kept 1 felony on my record. And I petitioned the Supreme Court of the United States, and they refused to hear my case. So there's really nothing more than I can do. I'm a convicted felon. I can't vote. I can't rent an apartment, I can't pass a background check for anything. And this is what happens when you're a law-abiding citizen who owns guns in the state of New Jersey. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
That might be more of a statement, but you said this happened down in Burlington County?
Yes, sir.
I don't know, is that the same county that Janine Allen was arrested
Shanine was in Atlantic County.
in? Because at the annual state meeting, which is a couple of weeks away, a couple weeks ago, Janine Allen was there with her lawyer, Evan Penn, and he stated, which is really, really troubling in this state, he said that when he took on her case, that all the law firms in that county threatened him for not going with the prosecution.
Yeah,
The name of the game is give the prosecution what they want.
I had a chance to talk to Shanine, when this was all happening, and she didn't know who to trust or really what to do. And I was kind of the only person who'd really done it, and she was getting a lot of what I thought was really bad advice. But there were a lot of different organizations who were saying you need to hire an African American attorney. Evan's trying to use you. He doesn't care about you. None of them care about you. You need to hire an African American attorney and take the plea deal. Otherwise, you're going to wind up going to prison for a long time. And I told Shanine, listen, Evan is the best. You have to decide what you do. And she told me the big reason that she didn't take any of the deals was the same reason I didn't. She has 2 kids, and when she was in one of her pretrial hearings, the judge and the prosecutor essentially said to her that if she had just lied to the cops and not given the police officers her concealed carry permit, that's only good in Pennsylvania, well, and other states with reciprocity, but New Jersey doesn't have reciprocity, so a concealed carry permit from Pennsylvania is no good in New Jersey. That she should have lied, and if she had lied, she wouldn't be there. She would never have been arrested, and she didn't want to be the person who raised her kids, saying the cops are your enemy. You have to lie to the cops. And she realized that's not the kind of parent I want to be, and it's not the kind of state that I want to live in. But yeah, Shanine got a lot of pressure, and she deserves a lot of acclaim because it's a very difficult decision to make. And I've talked to a lot of people in similar positions who are unwilling to make that stand. And Shanine did, and she had a lot to lose.
The law's been changed for out-of-staters, that now there's a presumption in favor of PTI for a person who has got an out-of-state carry permit, who is obeying the law of that state. But those of us who live in New Jersey do not get that benefit. We are still ineligible for PTI.
That's true.
It is only an out-of-state person with a valid out-of-state carry permit who can. We can't get carry permits anyway, so we can't carry legally. There's now an imbalance in that.
There's
people
more
from
of a
out of state
benefit
have better
if you
rights
don't
than we
live in the
do.
state of New Jersey and you're a gun owner. So in 2008, the Attorney General for the state of New Jersey, her name was Ann Milgram. Ironically, she's now, I hear, a big proponent of criminal justice reform. But at the time, she issued a directive on the Graves Act. And the Graves Act, there was an amendment in 2008 that changed illegal possession of a firearm from a 4th-degree felony to a 2nd-degree felony, making mere possession of a firearm the violent crime. Typically, it had only been a 2nd-degree felony if a firearm was used in the commission of a violent crime. And they got rid of that and said, no, just possessing it is the violent act. And she said in a directive to all the prosecutors in the state of New Jersey that they were to prosecute all cases uniformly, strictly, and vigorously. Those were her 3 adjectives. And so they did, with my case and with Shanine's case and hundreds of other cases. And it wasn't until Shanine's case shed light that this was still happening. A lot of people thought after Governor Christie let me out of prison that certainly something was going to be done so things like this didn't ever happen again. But there was a short celebration, and then the party ended and nobody went in to actually write the legislation and change the laws. So nothing was fixed. So lots of other people were getting trapped in the same situation that I was. And I guess it was about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, the new Attorney General issued a clarification on that directive, saying essentially, that's not really what we meant. That was, for criminals, people who actually commit crimes. We would like you to prosecute them uniformly and vigorously and consistently. But for otherwise law-abiding citizens who have no criminal record whatsoever, if they have a concealed carry permit from another state, then they should get pretrial intervention, which is essentially 1 year of probation and then you get your guns back. But that doesn't apply to well-intentioned, law-abiding citizens who live in New Jersey and don't have a concealed carry permit. The presumption is that you are carrying it illegally and you should not get PTI and you should be subject to the 7-year sentence. And that mandatory minimum has been upgraded from 36 months to 42 months. So the mandatory minimum now for somebody with no criminal record, who's never done anything wrong, had no criminal intent, had their lawfully owned firearms locked and unloaded in the trunk of the car, is a minimum 42 months in prison before they're even eligible for parole. And I'm sure there's a number of attorneys in here who can tell you how likely it is that an individual gets parole the first time they go in front of the board.
Were you carrying pistols or long arms?
I had 3 pistols, Car PM9 9mm, a Walther PPKS, and a Smith & Wesson Sigma 9mm that was just purchased by the NRA for their firearms museum down in Arlington.
Do you know if the state of New Jersey would look differently if you were carrying long arms rather than pistols?
Not according to the letter of the law. The letter of the law is firearms, and that's long arms, shotguns, black powder, you name it, that's a firearm. Heck, even pellet guns, I believe, in the state. Yeah, pellet guns and BB guns
A
are
loaded
technically
clip is
firearms.
actually considered a firearm. A loaded clip is a firearm. If you carry a loaded clip without the gun, it is considered to be carrying an illegal firearm. And you can get that 3.5 years. I don't know if they expect you to blow into it really hard and send the bullets out that way, but it is considered, it's the same as carrying a loaded weapon.
This weekend is the 20th.
What?
It's the anniversary of the British attack on Fort Lee. There will be probably at Fort Lee Historic Park 100, 200 individuals with firearms traveling from their homes to that site. Is there a possibility that the state of New Jersey, if they wanted to really be nudges, would be dragging off a bunch of people looking like British and American patriots
That would be
to the
great.
Scout?
They probably could. It would be horrible publicity for the state. I know the Attorney General and the Governor definitely don't want any more noise about these stupid firearms laws anymore. But I'll tell you what, they're going to keep getting a lot of noise because people are still going to get arrested for it until the laws change. And they absolutely could get locked up and thrown away unless they have the appropriate permits.
When you say appropriate permit, there's no permit to.
So open carry is effectively what they'd probably be doing, and open carry in the state of New Jersey is illegal. You can do concealed carry, I believe, and I'm not a lawyer, so definitely talk to Evan about this. But you can concealed carry with a permit only. Otherwise, everything is by way of exemption. And I never saw an exemption that said wearing a costume and carrying an antique weapon is an exemption.
At Napkin's class, he said you can walk down the street with an unloaded shotgun or rifle and there's nothing they can do to you.
With an unloaded.
Unloaded. Right on your shoulder, walk down the street. He said, hang out the window of your car.
Only a rifle or shotgun?
I took the gun law class.
So with long arms,
Yes.
so long as they're not loaded.
Right. I don't think I'd try it, but.
I definitely would try.
What I think it is to help hunters. Hunters are traveling down the road, walking from site to site, field to field.
Yeah.
They're not to be harassed. So that's what Evan was getting at. So I've heard the same thing, that it is on the books, because we were thinking about going down to Trenton one time, with our unloaded rifles, long guns that is, on our shoulders, but we thought that was a little too brazen.
It's tough, because even when you have guys like Evan, and you have state troopers, like the one that talked to me and told me what the laws were, at the end of the day, the laws don't matter if the police don't know them and the judge doesn't respect them.
Right, we were even talking about letting them know ahead of time that we were coming, give them every fair chance that we were gonna come. But in our certain little Second Amendment society circles, we all decided, you know what, it's just not worth it.
Yeah, I can't blame you. In the state of New Jersey, I mean, not that I'm even allowed to own firearms right now, but I certainly wouldn't do it. In fact, I don't even like coming, God bless you all, because I don't even like coming to New Jersey anymore. Governor Christie let me out on December 21st. I didn't even spend that night in prison. I haven't spent a night in New Jersey since then. And this is one of less than a handful, I can count them on my one hand, of times in the past 4 years that I've actually come back to this state. The retaliation against my family has been incredible.
By who?
Mostly the Mount Laurel Police Department. They position a squad car in front of my family's house in a very rough golf course community that they live in. And they just sit out there and they just watch them get in and out of the house and get the mail, and they're there all day, every day. My mom was actually in a car accident about a year and a half ago. It was pretty bad. It was about 2 miles from my parents' house. And they had to use the jaws of life to actually get her out. And it was only 2 miles away. My dad was already home from work. And my Aunt Celie, who used to be a nun, was there as well. And she had actually gone to get her PhD at UPenn and was a superintendent out in Pennsylvania. So my Aunt Celie and my dad got in a car and they went out. It's only 2 miles. Let's go make sure my wife and my sister-in-law are okay. And they get out there. And I believe one of the officers on the scene was the officer who arrested me. This is a story that I've got. I haven't seen the actual paperwork, but I believe one of the officers was actually one of those officers. And they had an ambulance parked across 4 lanes of traffic in the rain, and they wanted to, after extracting my mom out of the car, put her on a gurney and roll her across 4 lanes of traffic in the rain to put her in the ambulance. And my dad was irate. He's like, that's ludicrous. That's insanely dangerous. She's just been in a car accident. You have to use the jaws of life to get her out. Bring the ambulance over here. We can wait another couple minutes. And everybody was like, what, you want me to stand out here in the rain while we wait for that ambulance or another ambulance to come out? No. And the police officer arrested my dad for interfering. And threatened him with incarceration, cuffed him, threw him in the back of the squad car, and threatened to arrest my white-haired former nun aunt with obstruction as well. And somebody at the police station must have overheard this happening, because eventually they let my dad out of the back of the squad car. I imagine somebody overheard and was like, you can't just do that just because that's an Aitken. You can't just arrest him. But they did still give him the ticket, and they did find him guilty of obstruction. And all he did was
Make a big suggestion.
all he did was do exactly what any good, loving husband would do for his wife. That's all he did. And in the meantime, they've tried to, just make our lives miserable. And I've been telling my parents they have to move. Life in Mount Laurel for them is unbearable. And my sister lives there, and she constantly gets harassed. She's just a block from my parents. But my dad's stubborn, and that's probably where I get it from. And he said, there's no way. I don't even like it here anymore, but I'm not going to let them win. All of that's not in the book. No. There's a lot in the book, but a lot had to be cut just to tell that story.
You tell a story that that gives us a pattern of we're essentially railroading you, and not having at every level, from the police officer to the judge, and then harassment of your family or revealing here. Why are they railroading you?
Oh, I think because I spoke out. I had the gall to question them, and I don't think there's any question that this is repercussions for challenging the system and challenging their laws and shining a light on it, and not just locally, but going on Fox and Friends and going on Judge Napolitano's show and going and having Dennis Malloy of New Jersey 101.5 spend hours and hours talking about my case. These are intentional repercussions for shining a light on what is a very corrupt system and an unconstitutional law.
Can you visit your son now?
I could. If I have a police officer to escort me, and I have reserved a courtroom, and I immediately, after Governor Christie let me out, I filed a motion for reconsideration from the family court judge, and I brought the commutation order signed by Governor Chris Christie, and I said to the family court judge that, listen, it's no secret that Governor Christie has presidential ambitions. Do you really think a guy like that is going to take a chance on me and let me out of prison if there's any risk of me actually going out and committing some sort of real crime? He knows I'm not a criminal. I'm sure all of his lawyers did all of the investigating into my background. I know that my friends and family members got phone calls and were interviewed by people. Do you really think that he would sign this commutation order and let me out of prison if I was really a criminal? And the family court judge effectively said, well, as far as I'm concerned, you're still technically guilty of those convictions. You're still a convicted felon, and you would still be in prison if Governor Christie hadn't intervened. But for Governor Christie's intervention, you would still be in prison and you're still a convicted felon. So nothing in my eyes has actually changed.
So he just commuted your sentence? He did not give you a clemency?
Well, clemency is either pardon or commutation of sentence, and I intentionally asked not to be given a pardon. I didn't want to be forgiven for a crime that I didn't commit. I wanted to have my sentence commuted so that I could be freed from prison immediately and fight my case to the appellate division and win legal precedent. That's what I wanted to do. I felt like if I did that, then there was a chance for other people who would eventually find themselves in my same shoes to be able to say, no, look at this case law. What they're doing is illegal. And that was mostly successful. In the appellate division, they overturned illegal possession of firearms, which was the biggest one. That was the second-degree felony with the 7-year sentence. And they overturned the conviction and dismissed illegal possession of high-capacity magazines. But they upheld the conviction of illegal possession of hollow point ammunition. And this is the one that's really going to drive you guys nuts. So the appellate division decided that, okay, handguns and firearms have this laundry list of exemptions that say how you're able to move your firearms. From Dick's Sporting Goods or wherever you buy them, to your house, from your house to go hunting, from your house to go to the shooting range, and from one house to another when you're moving. Hollow point ammunition has all of the same exemptions, except it doesn't specifically say that you can take it from one house to another. So they decided that law-abiding citizens who have legally possessed hollow point ammunition are required by law to leave their hollow points in their prior residence when they're moving from one house to another. And as Evan Knappen said, you leave a nice note, a bottle of champagne, and all of your hollow points. And it just doesn't make any sense. That's why we appealed that decision to the New Jersey Supreme Court, who declined to hear it. And then we petitioned the United States Supreme Court, who also declined to hear it. But in my eyes, this is exactly the kind of thing that SCOTUS or the New Jersey Supreme Court should hear and should overturn. Because you can't have a law in the books that overnight turns all of these otherwise law-abiding citizens into felons. You just can't have a law that does that. And I'm certain that it wasn't the spirit of the legislature when they were writing that law. It wasn't, oh, we definitely don't want people to bring their lawfully owned hollow points from one house to another when they're moving. That's definitely not okay. It was an oversight. And the spirit of the law, I don't think, was that those people should be convicted felons serving up to a year in prison.
You mentioned earlier that they never had a warrant to search your car. So is it there's illegal search and seizure involved?
For a number of reasons, yes, it was illegal search and seizure.
Therefore, everything should be dropped.
Their phone call to me, the second phone call, not the first phone call. The first phone call reasonable phone call, they want to talk to me, make sure I'm okay. Second phone call, when they tell me that I'm being threatened with arrest if I don't do what they tell me to do, there's no probable cause to do that. So I believe that was a violation of my Fourth Amendment. And then when I finally got back to my parents' house and they wanted to search my car, I didn't want them to. And I made that clear. And we had actually a pretty simple conversation about how I thought they should get a warrant. And in fact, in the police report, they write how amicable and agreeable I was and how I was a very polite person who didn't want to consent to a search. And then they told me that if I didn't consent to the search, they would issue a 72-hour mandatory psychiatric hold and put me in a psych hospital. And when they did that, they would impound my car. And as part of the impounding process, they would search my car and itemize all of my possessions to make sure that when I got my car back, I got all of my possessions back too. And they told me, listen, one way or another, we're searching the car. Either we're doing it and you're going to spend the weekend in a psych hospital, or we can do it and that'll be that. I wound up spending the weekend in prison instead.
Yes, thanks so much, Brian, for your presentation. So sorry that you're going through this. But I'm thinking maybe this is a national, not just statewide, because we've heard of other states having this great crackdown on our gun control rights. And I'm thinking with the Obama administration, I'm thinking that some of us may know of the fact that Homeland Security, DHS has ordered 2 billion rounds of hollow point ammo that you mentioned. Why would a Homeland Security organization, agency need that much ammo? Also, related to that, our nation has built FEMA camps all over the nation. Why? And I'm thinking, the sources I'm getting this information from is from great websites like Hagman and Hagman.com, TrueNews.com. Some of us may have listened to these websites on the internet.
Yeah,
And I really think
those are great questions.
And I really think it's a national nefarious desire to have a civil war that...
I do think there is an intention to confiscate firearms in the United States. And one of the great ways of doing this, I had a conversation with, gosh, I can't remember his name, one of the editors over at Reason Magazine. And he was talking to me about, well, do you really think that there's like this great conspiracy to take, people's guns from them? And I was like, well, I mean, you're kind of prepping it like it's a loaded question, but let's look at the reality of the situation. We have so many laws on the books with so many non-violent victimless offenders who are technically prohibited persons, who are prohibited from owning firearms. Why would that be? Why do we have all of these laws on the book that turn otherwise law-abiding citizens who have never had any intent to harm another person? Why are we turning all of these millions of people into felons who also aren't allowed to vote and can't have firearms? To me, that seems like a great way to keep the public's voice suppressed and to keep guns out of their hands.
My answer is 300 million firearms in civilian hands. Good luck with that.
Yeah. Well, it's like the Japanese said. We would never invade America because behind every blade of grass would be an American with a rifle.
I don't know if it's so much a desire to suppress individuals' rights to carry guns, as it is the desire to feed a willing voting bloc. And so a lot of times when we hear these stories, we have to think about the fact that as long as there is a Democratic administration, and as long as Republicans continue to infight about who's a rhino, who's this, who's that, who doesn't like each other, and the eye is off the prize, then these laws will continue to proliferate. And so there has to be something within the separation of powers. If there's not anything that's going to stop the judicial branch, the legislative branch and the executive branch must be strong. And so that's all the more, what happened to you is all the more reason why Republicans should unify so that they can fight a common enemy.
I agree, I agree. And I think, in my case, the executive branch acted very strongly, even with Shaneen Allen. Where we failed as a state was with the legislative branch.
Correct.
Because there was no follow-through.
Correct.
And if there had been follow-through, and they had struck when the iron was hot, we could have had some of these unconstitutional laws repealed and replaced. But it didn't happen, and now we have all these other cases like Shaneen's and everyone else's.
Yeah, but now you're
So, sir,
social.
did you seek appellate review in the circuit court in Philadelphia?
I'm not sure
From
what
the
that
district
is.
court? From the, you didn't see,
What is appellate review?
He's asking if you saw habeas corpus.
Oh, no.
You know, federal habeas,
No,
you can't go to the third circuit until you go to the district court and file a habeas in the federal district court. Then you can go to the third circuit for review of a denied habeas. You can't go straight to the third circuit from the state court.
No, I meant to say, just the appellate review,
Right,
in the state court.
okay.
Oh, in the state court, yes, we went to the appellate division.
Oh, you did go to the appellate?
Yeah, and 2 of the convictions were overturned by the appellate division.
No, I see.
It appears when you speak that the assault on the Second Amendment is paramount. But when you look beyond that, it's, if they can't get that done, and they can't get that done quickly, they'll go to another level to inhibit our rights and to assault the freedom that we have on another level. So just focusing on only the Second Amendment is certainly an activist, inclination, but really must broaden their focus into what else is being assaulted on the school level, on the state level, on the local level. It's almost as if they want to keep us so busy that we can't get ahead on any of these individual issues. So until people look at the big picture, we will continue to have these losses, for the lack of a better word, on these individual issues. We really must look at all-encompassing at what they're trying to do to everything that we should be given our rights under the Bill of Rights.
With a frog in boiling water.
I agree with you completely, and in my case, I think even more egregious than the violation of my Second Amendment right was the violation of my right to due process. That to me was the worst part of it. Clearly, I had not violated the law, but the judge was such an activist that he was going to do whatever he could to make sure I was convicted one way or another. And if we live in a state where there's no oversight, who's watching the judge and their judicial activism?
Did you file a petition for a habeas corpus to the federal courts?
I did not, no. But you can email me, and we can talk about it.
I'll inbox you.
Okay.
With the NRA being so powerful, why aren't they in New Jersey doing something about our problem?
There's not enough NRA members in New Jersey.
I think they are, and I know that they're very interested in
They're
the
behind
state
the
of New
scenes
Jersey.
in New Jersey.
Yeah. I just met with a number of people from the NRA for their magazine, America's First Freedom. And I know Shaneen Allen was just on the cover of one of their magazines. And I mean, I think that magazine has a subscription rate of like 550,000 people. So they're definitely behind the scenes, I think, trying to work with legislation and raising public awareness. And certainly in my case, the NRA has an arm of it called the Institute for Legislative Action. And primarily what they do is they cut the check for the lawyers to lobby and or help write or sponsor pro-Second Amendment bills or have anti-Second Amendment bills repealed, taken off the books. And they used funds from that. And I believe this is one of the only times, a very rare occasion, if it's happened any other time, I haven't been able to find it, but that they actually took that money and put it towards criminal defense. That money is earmarked for changing laws. And I mean, they broke their own rule to use that money for my defense. And I think that's I think that's huge. And I think the NRA is doing, they're doing a heck of a job.
I think they're doing that for that girl out in, that was caught down in Atlantic City.
Shanine Allen, yeah.
Yeah.
Brian, did anybody in the system ever acknowledge that they were railroading you? Was there ever any person within local police, state police, prosecutors, anybody feel guilty for giving you?
Well, they all kind of acknowledged it, but never really in a way that they felt guilty about it.
So they were aware that they were railroading you?
Yeah, pretty much in a way that they were pretty smug about it, like, we'll show you, kid, kind of way.
They're part of the system.
Afterwards, though, after Governor Christie let me out, I received, I want to say, two or three emails from different jurors letting me know that they never wanted to convict me, but they felt like if they didn't, they could face contempt charges or something like that, and they were worried about how the judge was going to reprimand them if they didn't do what he told them to do. And I think that's all the more reason why people need to be aware of jury nullification. For every individual that's on trial, that law is also on trial. And people need to know that if a law is unjust, it's the citizen's job to find that law unjust and nullify the verdict.
You raised two valid points. One is that the biggest problem was the police officers and the people that were dealing with you didn't know the laws that they were supposed to be enforcing, which in any other profession would be considered malpractice.
Yes. And
the other one is that you were truly denied due process. And my question to you, do you have any recourse in that regard?
So, in the United States, individuals, and this goes back to anti-slavery reform after the Civil War, there is a law in the book called 42 U.S.C. 1983, and that is deprivation of civil rights. And so you can't necessarily sue the government, but you can sue the agents and the agencies of the government if they have deprived you of your civil rights. And I had a lawyer lined up to help me out with this, and he was really eager to beat the war drum, and we went on Fox and Friends with Steve Ducey, and we beat the war drum. And I think we beat the drum too soon, because it was before the appellate division came out with their decision. And I think that's the sole reason why they upheld that conviction. Because if they uphold one conviction, they can justify all of the actions of all of the agents of the state and say he wasn't technically violated. His civil rights weren't violated. He's technically convicted of this crime, so everything was justified.
Did the ACLU offer you any assistance?
I reached out to the ACLU, I never heard back.
Are you still fighting to overturn that third conviction?
Well,
Is there still hope that that's going to be reversed?
That's why we went to the New Jersey State Supreme Court, and they denied it, and we went to SCOTUS, and they denied it as well. If there's any additional recourse, I'm not familiar with it. That one lady was discussing an option I'd never heard of, so I'm interested in that. But there is an opportunity to do, so in the state of New Jersey, after 10 years of being released, you can have your criminal record expunged. But I would still have to wait another 6 years to be eligible for that. I was told that there's an expedited track, and after 5 years you can be eligible. And so Evan Knappen has agreed, and we really haven't talked publicly about this yet, but he's agreed to waive all the legal fees and to file that expedited track. And that requires court hearings and a lot of, briefs and motions. It's much more complicated than just, filling out the form for an expungement. And we're going that route, but that's not even an option until December 21st of 2015, so that's more than a year away.
Does your current job allow you to work on this, or is that the focus of your current work?
Well, my current job was writing and selling the book. That's right.
Well,
that's what I
after
spent the
that.
past year doing. I crowdfunded the book in October of last year. I was living in Austin working with a company called Emergent Order. And Texas is an amazing state. If anybody has an opportunity to go to Houston or Austin, you're gonna love it. Austin has great nightlife and everything. It's a little utopia. And the company I was working for, I was heading up their creative strategy, helping them launch marketing campaigns. If you ever saw the Keynes versus Hayek rap video on YouTube, these are the guys that created that. So I was helping them launch other things called Econ Pop, where we would look at movies like Ghostbusters or The Hunger Games and try and blend in free market Hayekian economics to try and get Hayek out there to the greater audience. And I decided, I'm just going to see if there's any interest in me writing this book. So I tried opening up a Kickstarter campaign, and Kickstarter is one of these platforms online where you can crowdfund money for any sort of creative endeavor. And they decided that writing a book about what I went through was not a creative endeavor. They have thousands of book projects, but a book project about the Second Amendment is not creative. So they wouldn't let me fundraise there. So I launched my campaign on Indiegogo, and I figured, okay, if I can get like 500 people to pre-order books, which is like $20,000, then I'll know that there's enough of a market interest, or I can sit down and actually write this book. And we wound up raising something like $42,000 in 30 days. And I was just overwhelmed. I was like, wow, I have to sit down and write a book now. So that's been the past year.
Or a screen script, right? A script for a movie?
Yeah, you could have Christian Bale or something.
Yeah, a good idea to get your story out on the phone.
Yes,
People don't read anymore.
I respectfully ask this question. 2 parts. Number 1, do you think by not showing what you had to search your car, did that in any way incite something? Was it inevitable that they were going to get into that trunk?
Well,
and then looking back, what would your takeaway be? Would there be something different that you would do now as you've come through this whole thing?
Yes, I can answer both of those questions. So they would have searched the car regardless of whether or not I signed that consent form. And they said they would do that by placing me in a 72-hour psychiatric hold and searching it.
Right.
So they were going to do it one way or
Where
another.
was the car? Was it in your parents' driveway?
It was right in front of my parents' house.
They had no grounds to impound it.
I think they said it was a cardi stop or something.
No, I just got a search like that suppressed. They can't, if they have the keys and the car's not movable, it's not subject to the automobile exception, they need a search warrant or consent. And I had a case where the consent to search was based on a threat to destroy the property, and the judge believed my witness, decided the cop was lying because I kind of proved he was lying, and suppressed the search.
First words out of your mouth are, I do not comply.
I know. So, the worst out of it is no.
That's right,
To answer your second question, the one major thing that I would have done differently is just not have complied with their second phone call, with their demand to return. I just would have kept driving and said, well, send the badges and the guns after me. I haven't done anything wrong.
And you would have been shot, though.
I could have been shot. You're absolutely right.
My hands are in plain sight.
And look what happened to Shanine Allen. She went ahead and did what they said, and she got arrested right away and faced jail time. She was saying, sure, whatever you want. She was trying to be nice about it, and and she didn't have it.
Yeah, you know what? They love it when you're the compliant, good citizen willingly giving up your rights.
In case anybody doesn't know about Shanine Allen, she lives in Pennsylvania. She has a legal gun, legal concealed carry, stepped over to New Jersey, got pulled over for speeding or blinker or something like that, and she's officer goes right to her door and she goes, by the way, I'm a legal permit holder. Here is my license to carry. And they arrested her.
Yep.
Before you moved here, you mentioned that you checked out all the laws to bring your guns. Did you know your other constitutional rights? If you would have known them, you would have been probably in a better situation to answer their questions, or you weren't aware of them?
In a way I did. And I think that's why I asked them if I was legally required to come back in the first place. Because I knew something was fishy, and I hadn't studied law, but I knew what probable cause was.
They can lie to you, you can't lie to them.
Yeah, that's the truth. But yeah, I mean, I think I was fairly well versed with it, and I remember thinking, aren't they supposed to Mirandize me at some point? Like they've got a gun, a guy with a gun standing over me. The police officer's telling me I'm not free to leave, when we had a motion to suppress all of the evidence based on a violation of, well, I think it's called the fruit of the poisonous tree. But essentially, if the search is illegal, then all of the evidence gathered is inadmissible. And my lawyer asked the police officer, what would you have done if he tried to leave? And he said, well, I would have gotten in his way and stopped him and told him he's not free to leave. I don't think it gets any clearer than that. If they're telling me I'm not free to leave, even in a hypothetical, and they have a guy with a gun standing over me telling me I'm not allowed to leave, I'm in their custody. I should have been Mirandized, and I should have been told I was subject to something.
You said you read all the laws prior to transporting the weapons, and you believe you were following the law, right?
Yes.
Is that the final result, or now do you believe you technically violated the law? Was there a technical violation or not?
No, there's no technical violation. If there is a technical violation, it's illegal possession of hollow point ammunition, because the law doesn't specifically say that you're allowed to take ammunition that you can legally own from one house to another when you're moving. So that's a technical violation that I don't think meets the spirit of the law, and that thousands of people in New Jersey could have been committing unknowingly since this appellate division came down with that decision.
But they tried you on these other grounds too, right? Before there was a trial, was any motion made based on the law?
Well, we made a motion to dismiss the case based on the Second Amendment, based on the Heller case, and the McDonald case hadn't come down yet, and the judge was pretty much like, well, who do you think I am? You think I'm gonna jump the gun on the McDonald case? Beat the Supreme Court to it and say that the Second Amendment applies in this manner in the state of New Jersey.
Did you move to suppress though? You moved to suppress or for Fourth Amendment grounds?
We moved to
right?
suppress,
Fifth
and we had a
Amendment
separate
grounds,
hearing
I'm
for a motion to dismiss. We filed several motions to dismiss.
If there's no violation, then that should have been your main ground. Forget about the constitutional.
Yeah, well, not in New Jersey, unfortunately.
Get up as they go along.
Any other questions? Actually, because it's getting a little bit late, and I know some people haven't gotten books, if anyone's interested, I can answer questions back there while anybody who wants to get books can get a book, and I'll sign it however you want, so long as it's not too profane about New Jersey. Thank you.
The book is available in the back. Go see Brian. He'll answer your questions back there.